Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Samsarada Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Prapta Sakalyana Gurnana Vasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Prapta Sakalyana Gurnana Vasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam 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 Mahaprabhu Kirtana Nitya Gita Vaditra Madhyam Manasura Sena Romanchakam pasru taranga bhajo Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Shri Vigrahara Dana Nityanana Shringaratanama Niramajanado Shri Juktasya Bhaktamsa Niyunjatapi Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavat Prasadu Satana Traptan Hari Bhakta Sangam Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavat Prasadu Satana Traptan Kridvaiva Trapte Bhajata Shadeva Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Shradikama Davayara Para Madhurya Leela Guna Rupa Namna Shradikama Davayara Para Madhurya Leela Pratikshana Swa Dhanalalupasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Pratikshana Swa Dhanalalupasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Ne Kunja Yuno Ratikeli Siddhai Jajali Bhir Joktir Apekshaniya Ne Kunja Yuno Ratikeli Siddhai Jajali Bhir Joktir Tatrati Daksha Otivalavasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Tatrati Daksha Otivalavasya Vande Guru Sakshadharitena samastasya Ruktastatava Vyataiva sadhuvi Sakshadharitena Kintu praborja priya eva tasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Kintu praborja priya eva tasya Vande Guru Shri Yasya prasada Bhagavat prasada Yasya prasadam nagati kutapi Yasya prasadam bhagavat sadam Yasya prasadam nagati kutapi Dhyayam stubham tasya yasya trisandhyam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Dhyayam stubham tasya yasya trisandhyam Vande Guru Shri Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamiti Namine Nama Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravane Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunavadi Pachatare Shatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Ram. Hariyaraye Namah Krishna Jadavaye Namah. Jadavaye Madhavaya Keshavaya Namaha. Gopal Govindaram Shri Madhusudan. Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mohan. Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita. Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita. Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhattaraguna. Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasaraguna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Haribo, Haribo, Nitai Gora Haribo, Nitai Gora Haribo, 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 Nitai Gora Pramande Haribo. Jai Vishnu Paraparamhansa Prabhupada Acharya Suttara Sri Shri Maharaj Divine Grace Abhachar Ravina Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Pratishta Bhiviti Samstapaka Acharya Vaishnava Siromani Patita Pavana Srila Prabhupada Ji Maharaj Ki Jai. Shri Gauriya Guru Vargapati Udhar Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhakta Raghunatha Shri Jiva Gopala Bhakta Dasa Guna Sat Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ji Ki Jai. Nantakur Vaishnavrind Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Se Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrind Ki Jai. Jai Param Dayal Shri Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai. Prema Nama Sankirtane Ka Janaka Prema Purushottama Shri Satchidananda Shriman Gauranga Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Gaur Hari Mavrana Avatar Ki Jai. Golokera Pramadhana Hari Nam Sankirtan Jaga Ki Jai. Juga Dharma Hari Krishna Mantra Ki Jai. Prihat Nidanga Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopina Radha Kund Syama Kund Giriraj Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Brajavim Vrindavan Mathura Ki Jai. The Lordship Shri Radha Nilamadhava Ki Jai. Shri Shimaya Purnavadyup Eka Chakradam Ki Jai. Paramakaruna Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai. Shri Purushottama Ketra Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Shri Shri Jagannath Swami Baladevi Prabhu Smaspudra Devi Sudarshan Chakra Bhagavan Ki Jai. Bhakti Sarva Vigna Vinashana Karan Shringari Bhagavan Ki Jai. Sitaram Lakshman Bhakti Hanuman Ji Ki Jai. Jaganga Mai Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Tulsi Maharani Vrindi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Shri Mati Radharani Ki Jai. Shamaveta Bhakta Vrindi Ki Jai. Nitai Gaura Ripramanandi Haribo. All glories to the assembly bodies, all glories to the assembly bodies, all glories to the assembly bodies, all glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Prahlada Daine. प्रह्लाददायिने हिरण्यकशिपूर्वक्षः शिलटङ्कनखलाये शिलटङ्कनखलाये
जय शिलटङ्कनखलाये
इतो नरसिंह परतो नरसिंह येतो येतो यामिततो नरसिंह
जय जत जत जामिततो नरसिंह
येतो येतो यामिततो नरसिंह
जय जत जत जामिततो नरसिंह
बहि नरसिंह हृदये नरसिंह बहि नरसिंह हृदये नरसिंह नरसिंहमदिं शरणं प्रपद्ये
नरसिंहमदिं शरणं प्रपद्ये
तव करकमलवरे नाकामद्भुतशृङ्गा ललिता हिरण्यकशिपू तनुभृङ्गा केशवद्रीता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे
बाबा कर कमल बरे नाका अद्भुत
ललिता हिरण्यकशिपू केशवद्रीता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे केशवद्रीता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे
केशवद्रीता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश
जय नरसिंह दे जय नरसिंह दे जय नरसिंह दे जय नरसिंह दे
जय नरसिंह रे नरसिंह रे जय नरसिंह रे जय नरसिंह रे
जय प्रह्लाद महाराज जय प्रह्लाद महाराज जय प्रह्लाद महाराज जय प्रह्लाद महाराज
जय प्रह्लाद महाराज प्रह्लाद
महाराज जय प्रह्लाद महाराज जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद
जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद
जय जय गुरुदेव गुरुदेव जय श्री लक्ष्मी नरसिंहदेव भगवान की जय, श्री प्रहलाद महाराज की जय।
Shri Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradede Satavatai Namo Namah. Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradede Satavatai Namo Namah. Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Pradede Satavatai Namo Namah. Srimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki.
Namo Namaha Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha
Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namah.
Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha
Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namah.
Radha Krishna Seva Pabo Eya Bilashi
Radha Krishna Seva Pava Eya Vilasi.
Radha Krishna Seva Pabo Eya Bilashi.
Radha Krishna Seva Pava Eya Vilasi.
Ye tomar sharanaloy tara vanch purna hoy.
Tamar Sharanala Taravancha Purna.
Kripa kori koro tare Vrindavana basi.
Kripa Kare Kara Tare Vrindavasi.
Moraye iha bilash Bilas kunje diyo vas.
Moraya Vilas Vilas Kunde Diyava.
Nayane heri bo sada युगल रूप रासी
माया में वो सदा जुगल रूपरासी
हे निवेदन दारो सखीरानुघात कोरो सेवाधिकार दिए कोरो निज दासी दीना कृष्ण दासे कोई न मोरा होय दीना कृष्ण दासे कोई न मोरा होय श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेमे सदा न बासी श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेमे सदा न बासी यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्याधिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्याधिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्याधिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जय तुलसी महारानी जय वृंदा देवी जय तुलसी महारानी जय वृंदा देवी
जय तुलसी महारानी जय वृंदा देवी जय तुलसी महारानी जय वृंदा देवी
नित्य गौर हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल नित्य Gaura Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Simarani ki jai.
Shri Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Ke Sava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Shatavatai Namo Namaha Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Ke Sava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Shatavatai Namo Namaha Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavatai Namaha Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. O Tulasi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire to attend the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you is fulfilled. Bestow your mercy upon him, you make him resident over in Vrindavan. My desire is that you also give me a residence, the pleasure groves of Shri Vrindavan Dham. As within my vision, I would always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower carry damsels of Raj. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maid servant. Please spread the fallen and lowly servant Krishna praise. May I always sing loud Shri Radha and Govind. Shri Mati Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shri Krishna Ki Jai. Jaito Satanam Ajanam Bhavamada Shreya Kari Vachandika Vitanam Vidya Anandam Buddhivardhanam Pratipadam Purnam Buddhasadanam Sarvatmasnam Param Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Nam Akari Gaudhari La Sarva Shakti Tatra Pitanga Muktashmarane Nakala Pitadrusi Tava Krupaya Bhagavan Mamapi Udhaivam Kirishanya Humanity at large, God is praised, raised, the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we're always anxious. Oh my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings. And thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names, you have invested all your transcendental energies. There's no even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names. But I'm so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. Once you chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than a straw in the street, one should be more tolerant than the tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your cause of devotional service, birth after birth. O Son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yet somehow or other I'm falling in this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at the lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes will be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up? And will the hairs of my body stand on end at the recitation of your name? Oh Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I feel all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he should remain so, even if he sunders me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, but he's always my worshipful Lord unconditionally. Shri Shri Shikyastakam Ki. There are 10 offenses in matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that must be avoided. They are as follows. 1. To blaspheme the devotees, to dedicate their life for propagating the holy name of the Lord. 2. To consider names the demigods, the Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, to be equal to or independent of the name Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the orders of the spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic literature or literatures and pursuits of Vedic version. 5. To consider the glory of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretation on the holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities on the strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord. 8. To consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which often varies as spiritual activity karma kanda. 9. To instruct the faithless person about the glories of the holy name. And 10. To not have complete faith in chanting the holy names and to maintain material attachments, even after understanding so many instructions on this matter. It is also an offense to be entertained while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success of Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our respectful obeisance unto all the Vaishnavas devoted to the Lord. They are just like desire trees. They can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls.
Stanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Vaishnava.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Janmadya Setam Vairitartas Chati Swavigasvarat. Tena Brahmarudaya Adikavaye Mujantija Suraya. Tejo Varimrida Jata Vinimajo Jatra Trisagumrisa. Namna Swena Sada Nirasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dhimai.
O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of
O
Vasudeva.
all-pervading personality Godhead.
O all-pervading personality of Godhead.
My respectful obeisances unto you.
Offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
Meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute
And the
truth
primeval cause of all.
and the primeval cause of all causes,
Creation, sustenance, and destruction manifest in
with the
the universe.
creation, sustenance, and destruction to manifest the
He is
universe.
directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all
And
manifestations.
he is independent because there's no other cause beyond him.
And he is independent because because there's no other cause beyond him.
It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji,
It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge into the
the
heart of
original living being.
Brahma, the original living being.
By him, even the Greek sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are
As
present
one
to
is
be-
bewildered by the illusory representations
As one is bewildered by the illusory
of water seen on fire or land seen on water.
the water seen the fire of land is seen on
Only
water.
because of him do the material universes,
Only because of him do the material universe
temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature,
temporarily manifested by the reaction of the three modes of
appear
nature
factual although they're unreal.
appear factual.
I
although they are
therefore meditate upon him, Lord Sri Krishna,
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna,
who is eternally, or he was forever free from the illusory representations of the material world.
who is eternally existent in the transcendental world, which,
And who is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world.
which is forever free from the illusory representation.
I
of
meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon him for he is the
Dharma
absolute.
Pujita Kaitravocha,
Dharma Prujita Kaita
Paramo Nirmatsaranam Satam,
Paramo Nirmasara
Vedyam Vastavam Atra Vastu,
Vedyam Vastavam Astra
Shivadam
Vastu
Tapotrayam,
Shivadam Tapo Trimulanam
Shimad Bhagavate Mahamani
Shrimad
Krite,
Bhagavate Mahamani
Kim Va Purir Ishwaraha,
Vaparirishvara
Sadyo Hridi Avarudyate Tra,
Sadhyavruddhi
Kriti
Avarudyatitra
Bihi Sususavistakshana,
Kritivhi Shushushvistatyana,
completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated.
completely rejecting all religious activities which
This
are material
Bhagavata
motivated.
Purana propounds the highest truth,
This Bhagavatam propounds a high truth,
which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart.
which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure.
The
in
highest
heart.
truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
The highest truth, the reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of
Such
all.
truth uproots the threefold miseries.
Such a truth uproots the threefold
This
miseries.
beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity
This is the beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by Krishna Vyasadeva.
is sufficient in itself for God realization.
It's sufficient in itself for
What
God
is the need of
realization.
any other scripture?
What is the need of the other
As soon
scripture?
as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam
As soon as one attentively submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam,
by this culture of knowledge,
by this culture of
the
knowledge,
Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
the Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
Nigama kaptaror galitam phalam.
Nigamaka-
Sukhamukad amrita dravya samdhyatam. Pibatam bhagavatam rasam alayam. Muhur aho raska bhuvibhavakaha. O expert and thoughtful man, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desire to read Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of C. Sukadeva Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. Shantam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridyantak Stohya Bhadrani Vidunati Suhitsatam. To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures,
To hear about Krishna from the Vedic
or
Lord,
to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita,
or to hear from him directly through
is
the
itself
Bhagavad Gita.
righteous activity.
It is self-righteous activity.
And for one who hears about Krishna,
And when we hears about Krishna,
Lord Krishna, who is dwelling in everyone's heart,
Lord Krishna dwelling within everyone's
acts
heart,
as a best wishing friend,
acts as the best wishing
and
friend,
purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him.
and purifies the devotee constantly engages in hearing of him.
Nastapresu Bhadresu
Nasta Presho
Nityam
Bhadrishu
Bhagavata Sevaya
Nityang Bhagavata Seva
Bhagavati Uttamashloke
Bhagavati Uttamasloke
Bhaktir Bhavati Naistaki.
Bhaktir Bhavatir Nasti.
In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge.
In this way, the devotee naturally develops dormant transcendental.
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
and from the devotees,
and from the
he
devotees,
becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord.
he becomes fixed in devotional service to the Lord.
Tadarajastamo bhava
Darajastamo Bhava
kamalobhadayaschaye
Kamalobhadaya
chita iteranavidam
Chedaiterana
stitvam sattve prasidati.
Sitam Sarve Pasira.
By development of devotional service,
By development of devotional
one
service,
becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance,
one becomes freed from the mode of passion.
and thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
And thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
Evam prasana manaso
Evam prasanamana
bhagavad bhakti yogadaha
Bhagavata
bhagavad tattva vijnanam
Bhagavatta Vijnana
mukta sangasya jayate.
Mukta Sangasya Jayate.
When these impurities are wiped away,
When his impurities are
the
wiped away,
candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness,
the candidate remains steady in his position of pure
becomes
goodness,
enlivened by devotional service,
becomes enlivened by devotional
and
service,
understands the science of God perfectly.
and understand the science of God perfectly.
Vidyate hridaya grantis,
Vidyate Hridaya Ghanti
chidyante sarvasamsaya,
Chidhyante Sarvasamsaya
siyante jasya karmani,
Chiyante Chasakarmani
drista evat manishware,
Drusta Evadmaneshwari
Thus, Bhakti Yoga severs the hard knot of material affection
Thus, the Bhakti Yoga severs the harness of the material affection
and enables one to come at once to the stage of samsayam samagram,
and enables one to come at once to the stage of assumption,
understanding of the Supreme Absolute Truth Personality Godhead.
understanding the supreme, absolute, true personality of God.
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness
can one understand the science of Krishna.
can one understand the science of Krishna.
Shri Guru Vastika prayers, Ki Jai. The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy, just as a cloud pours water on a forest fire to extinguish it.
The spiritual master is receiving
material.
benediction from the ocean of mercy, just as a cloud pours water on the forest fire to
So the
extinguish it.
spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence.
So the spiritual master delivers the material afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material
I offer my
existence.
respectful base not the lotus feet of such a spiritual master is an ocean of auspicious qualities.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master who is an ocean of auspicious qualities.
Chanting holy names, dancing in ecstasy, singing and playing musical instruments.
Chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy, singing and playing musical
The
instruments.
spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
The spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
Because he is relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind.
Because he is relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind.
Sometimes his hair stands on end.
Sometimes his hair stands
He
on
feels
end.
quivering in his body,
He feels quivering in his
and
body.
tears flow from his eyes like waves.
And tears flow from his eyes like
I offer my
waves.
respectful obeisance at the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual
The
master.
spiritual master is always engaged in the temple worship of Shri Radha and Krishna.
The spiritual master is always engaged in the temple worship of Shri Radha and
He
Krishna.
also engages his disciples in such worship.
He also engages his disciples in such
They
worship.
dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments,
They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments.
clean their temple,
Clean the
and
temple.
perform other similar worship of the Lord.
And perform other similar worship of the
I
Lord.
offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
The spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food.
The spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food.
Analyzes that which is licked, chewed, drunk, and sucked.
Analyze that which lick, chewed, drunk, and
When the
sight.
spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavat Prasada,
When the spiritual master sees that devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavad Prasad,
he is
he
satisfied.
is
I
satisfied.
offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual
The
master.
spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastimes of Radhika and Madhava.
The spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastimes of Radhika Madhava
And their qualities, names, and forms.
and the qualities, name, and form.
The spiritual master aspires to relish these at every moment.
The spiritual master aspires to relish these at every moment.
This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures and followed by all authorities.
I offer my respectful obeisance.
I offer my respect based on the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. Again.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
The spiritual master is very dear because he is expert in assisting the gopis who at different times make different tasteful arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavana.
The spiritual master is very, because he's expert in assisting the gopi who's in different time make different tasteful arrangement for the perfection of Radha and conjugal loving affairs within the groves of
I
Vrindavan.
offer my most humble obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
I offer my humble obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
The spiritual master is to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord because he is the most confidential servitor of the Lord.
The spiritual master is to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord because he's the most confidential servant of the Lord.
This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures and followed by all authorities.
This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures and followed by all authorities.
Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master as a bona fide representative of Sri Hare Krishna.
Therefore, I offer my humble obeisance to the Lord of such a spiritual master, who is the bona fide representative of Sri Hare Krishna.
By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna.
By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna.
Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement.
Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement.
Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master.
Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master.
At least 3 times a day, I should offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master.
At least 3 times a day, I should offer my respectful obeisance to the Lord of my spiritual master.
Shri Brahma Samhita Ki Jai. Wow, somebody took it. Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchitananda Vigraha Anadiradi Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam
Ishvara Parama Krishna Sakchidananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam
Chintamani Prakara Satma Sukalpa Vriksha
Chintamani Prakara Sadma Sukalpa Vriksha
Laksavrite Susurabhira Vipaliyantam
Lakshya Vriteshi Surabhira Vipalayantam
Lakshmi Sahasra Satasambrahma Sevyamanam
Lakshmi Sahasha Satasam Brahma Sevyamanam
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham
Venam Kvanantam Aravinda Dalayataksam
Venum Kvanantam Aravinda Darayaktaksham
Parhavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam
Paramvata Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam
Kandarpa Koti Kamaniya Vishesha Shobham
Kandarpa Koti Kamaniya Vishesha Shobham
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Alola Chandra Kalasadvanamalya Vamsi
Alula Chandra Kala Sarva Namalya Vamsi
Ratnam Gadam Pranayakeli Kalavilasam
Ranangadam Pranayakeli Kala Vilasam
Shyamam Jibanga Lalitanyata Prakasam
Syamam Tribhangala Litam Niyata Prakasham
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Angani Yasya Sakalendriya Vrittimanti
Angani Yasha Sakalendriya Vrittimanti
Pasyanti Panti Kalyanti Chiram Jaganti
Pasyanti Panti Kalayanti Chiram Jaganti
Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigrahasya
Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigrahasya
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Ananta Rupam
Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Anantarupam
Adyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Cha
Adyam Purana Purusham Navajauvanam Cha
Vede Sudurlabham Adurlabham Atma Bhakto
Vedeshi Durlabham Adurlabham Atma Bhakto
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Pantastu Koti Satavatsara Sampragamyo
Pantastu Koti Sadavatsara Sampragam
Vayoratapi Manaso Muni Pungamanam
Vayoratapi Manaso Muni Pungana
Sobhyasiyat Prapadasimya Vichintya Tatpe
Sophyasya Prapada Simya Vichincha Tatte
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Ekop Yasora Chayatum Jagadanda Kotim
Ekvapya Sura Chayitum Jagadanta Kutim
Yaschakti Rasti Jagadanda Chayayadanta
Yashakti Rasti Jagadanta Chayajadanta
Andantarasta Paramanu Chayantarastam
Andantarasta Paramanu Chayantarastam
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Yad Bhava Bhavita Diyo Manajastataiva
Jad Bhava Bhavito Diyo Manujastathaiva
Samprapya Rupa Mahima Sanayana Bhusaha
Samprapya Rupa Mahima Sanayana Bhusha
Sukta Yameva Nigama Pratitaistuvanti
Shuktir Yameva Nigama Pratitaistuvanti
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhavitavis
Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratipavitavis
Tabiya Eva Nijarupa Tayakalabi
Tabiya Eva Nijarupat
O Goloka Eva Nivasata Kilatma Bhuta
Goloka Eva Nivasatya Kilatma Bhuto
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena
Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena
Santaksadeva Hidayesu Vilokayanti
Santasadeva Videshu
Yam
Vilokayanti
Shama Sundaram Achintya Gunaswarupam
Yam Syama Sundaram Achintya Guna Swarupa
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Ramadimurti Sukalani Amenatistan
Ramadimurti Sukalani Yamena Tishtan
Nanavatara Makarod Bhuvane Sukintu
Nana Vatara Makarod Bhuvane Shukintu
Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramam Pumamyo
Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramam Pumanyo
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Yasya Prabha Prabhavato Jagananda Koti
Yasha Prabha Prabhavato Jagananda Koti
Koti Swasesu Vasudadi Vibhuti Binam
Koti Swashesha Vasudari Vibhuti Vinam
Tad Brahma Niskalam Anantam Ashesha Bhutam
Tad Brahma Niskalam Anantam Ashesha Bhutam
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Maya Hiyasya Jagadanda Satani Sute
Maya Yasa Jagananda Satani Sute
Traigun Yatad Vishaya Veda Vitayamana
Traiguna Tarvishaya Veda Vidayamana
Sattvam Lambi Para Sattva Visuddha Sattvam
Sattva Lambi Para Sattvam Visuddha Sattvam
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Ananda Chinmaya Rasat Mataya Manasu
Ananda Chinmaya Rasat Mataya Manashu
Ya Praninam Pratifalam Smaratam Upetya
Ya Praninam Pratipalam Smaratam Upetya
Layatena Bhuvanani Jaya Yajasram
Lila Yitena Bunavani Jatyaja Shastram
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Golokanamni Nitidamni Tale Chatasya
Golo Kanamni Nijadhamni Tali Chatesa
Devi Mahesha Haridama Sute Sutesu
Devi Mahesha Haridama Suteshu Teshu
Te Prabhava Nichaya Vihitas Chayena
Tete Prabhavani Chaya Vihitas Chayena
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham
Shristi
Bhajami
Stati Pralaya Sadhana Sakti Reka
Sriti Stiti Pralaya Sadhana Shakti Reka
Chayeva Yasya Bhuvanani Vibharti Durga
Jayeva Yasha Bhuvanani Vibhuti Durga
Chana Rupam Apiyasya Chatesta Tesa
Icha Rupam Abhijasha Sachitesta Chesa
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Shiram Yata Dadi Vikara Visesa Yoga
Kiram Yata Dadi Vikara Vishesha Yoga
Sanjayate Nahitata Pritagasti Heto
Sanjayate Navihita Pritagasti Hetu
Yasambutam Apitata Samapaiti Karyat
Yasambhutam Apitata Samupaitikaya
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Deparchad Eva Hitasantaram Abhyapetya
Depachi Eva Isasantaramuphupetya
Dipayate Vivita Hetu Samana Dharma
Dipayate Vivrita Hetu Samana Dharma
Yastadrik Eva Hicha Vishnu Taya Vibhati
Yastatatra Eva Icha Vishtaya Pivati
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Yakarna Narna Vajale Vajati Swayoga
Yakaranana Vajale Vajati Svayogam
Nidram Ananta Jagadanda Saroma Kupaha
Nidram Ananta Jagananda Saruma Kupa
Adhara Shaktim Avalambya Param Swamurtim
Andara Shakti Mavalambya Param Samurti
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 2, Chapter 6, Verse 17 Swadisnyam Patapan Prano
Swadishnyam Pratapana Prano
Bahischa Pratapati Patapatyaso
Bahischa Pratapataso
Evam Virajam Patapam
Evam Virajam Pratapam
Tapatyantar Bahipumam.
Tapatyantar Bahipumam.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. The sun illuminates both internally and externally by expanding its radiation. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by expanding His universal form maintains everything in the creation, both internally and externally. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. The universal form of the Lord, or the impersonal feature of the Lord known as Brahmajyoti, is clearly explained here and compared to the radiation of the sun. The sunshine may expand all over the universe, but the source of the sunshine, namely the sun planet, or the deity known as the source of the sunshine, namely the sun planet, or the deity known as Surya Narayana, is the basis of such radiation. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, is the basis of the impersonal Brahmajyoti radiation, or the impersonal feature of the Lord. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 14:27. So, the universal form of the Lord is the secondary imagination of the impersonal form of the Lord. So, the universal form of the Lord is the secondary imagination of the impersonal form of the Lord. But the primary form of the Lord is Shyam Sundar with two hands, playing on his eternal flute. 75% of the expansive radiation of the Lord is manifested in the spiritual sky, Tripad Vibhuti, and 25% of his personal radiation comprehends the entire expansion of the material universes. This is also explained and stated in the Bhagavad Gita 10:42. Thus, the 75% expansion of his radiation is called his internal energy, whereas the 25% expansion is called the external energy of the Lord. The living entities, who are residents of the spiritual as well as the material expansions, are his marginal energy, Tatastha Shakti, and they are at liberty to live in either of the energies, external or internal. Those who live within the spiritual expansion of the Lord are called liberated souls, whereas the residents of the external expansion are called the conditioned souls. We can just make an estimate of the number of the residents of the internal expansions in comparison with the number of residents in the external energy, and may easily conclude that the liberated souls are far more numerous than the conditioned souls. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The sun illuminates both internally and externally by expanding its radiation. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by expanding his universal form, maintains everything in the creation both internally and externally. So this is a further explanation and understanding of the universal form of the Lord. And as it says here, the universal form of the Lord, or the impersonal feature of the Lord known as the Brahmajyoti, is clearly explained here and compared to the radiation of the sun. So there's an equivalency between the imaginary universal form of the Lord and the impersonal feature of the Lord known as Brahmajyoti. So this Brahmajyoti is explained in the 14th chapter, 27th verse also. Brahmanohi pratistaham amritasya bhiyasya cha sasvatasya chadharmasya sukaisya kantikasya cha, which says, and I am the basis of the impersonal Brahman, which is immortal, imperishable, and eternal, and is the constitutional position of ultimate happiness. So, in the purport, Prabhupada says, the constitution of Brahman is immortality, imperishability, eternity, and happiness. Brahman is the beginning of transcendental realization. Paramatma the supersoul is the middle, the second stage in transcendental realization. And the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the ultimate realization of the Absolute Truth. Therefore, both Paramatma and the impersonal Brahman are within the Supreme Person. It is explained in the 7th chapter that material nature is the manifestation of the inferior energy of the Supreme Lord. The Lord impregnates the inferior material nature with fragments of the superior nature, and that is the spiritual touch in the material nature. When a living entity conditioned by the material nature begins the cultivation of spiritual knowledge, he elevates himself from the position of material existence and gradually rises to the Brahman conception of the Supreme. This attainment of the Brahman conception of life is the first stage in self-realization. At this stage, the Brahman realized person is transcendental to the material position, but he is not actually perfect in Brahman realization. If he wants, he can continue to stay in the Brahman position and then gradually rise to the Paramatma realization and then to the realization of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There are many examples of this in Vedic literatures. The 4 Kumaras were situated first in the impersonal Brahman conception of truth, but then they gradually rose to the platform of devotional service. One who cannot elevate himself beyond the impersonal conception of Brahman runs the risk of falling down. In Srimad Bhagavatam it is stated that although a person may rise to the stage of impersonal Brahman without going further, with no information of the Supreme Person, his intelligence is not perfectly clear. Therefore, in spite of being raised to the Brahman platform, there is the chance of falling down if one is not engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. In Vedic language, in the Vedic language, it is also said, Rasovai sa rasam hievayam labdva nandi bhavati. When one understands the personality of Godhead, the reservoir of pleasure, Krishna, he actually becomes transcendentally blissful. Taittiriya Upanishad 2.7.1. The Supreme Lord is full in 6 opulences, and when a devotee approaches him, there is an exchange of these 6 opulences. The servant of the king enjoys on an almost equal level with the king, and so eternal happiness, imperishable happiness, and eternal life accompany devotional service. Therefore, realization of Brahman, or eternity, or imperishability, is included in devotional service. This is already possessed by a person who is engaged in devotional service. So this is also explained in 7th chapter, 19th verse, which says, Bahunam janmanamante gyanavam mam prapadyante vasudeva samabhiti samahatma sudurlabha. So there it says, after many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. So here Krishna is explaining Prabhupada in the purport to this verse 719 quotes the Purusha Sukta, or the first 2 mantras of the Purusha Sukta. That is very significant, and I'm going to explain why now. The translation, I read it yesterday, but I'm going to read it again. This is Prabhupada's translation. It says, Sahasra Shirsa Purusha, Sahasraksha Sahasrapat, Sabhumim Vishvato Vritva, Tyatistad Dasangulam. He is all that was and all that will be. He is Lord of immortality and all that is nourished by food. Lord Vishnu has thousands of heads, thousands of eyes, thousands of feet. he is encompassing the whole universe, he still extends beyond it. He is, in fact, this entire universe. Okay, now, Prabhupada summarizes this as the universal perception of Krishna, or the universal vision of Vasudeva. Now, what does that mean? Well, it has 5 aspects to it. One has universal realization of Krishna. One, that first of all he realizes that the material world is a perverted reflection of the spiritual world. And it's a perverted reflection of all the spiritual variegatedness. 2, he realizes that there's a relationship with Krishna in everything. Everything he can perceive in the material world, there's a relationship with Krishna. Nothing is independent of the Lord. Number 3, he thinks of everything in relation with Krishna. So, material vision is to see things without seeing their relation with Krishna. And spiritual vision is to see everything in relationship with Krishna. Because he's the cause of all causes. He's the origin of everything. He's maintaining everything, and everything will be reabsorbed back into his body, transcendental body. So, and then the 4th point is when one has such universal vision of Krishna, meaning seeing relationship of everything to Krishna, sees Krishna in everything, then this universal vision of Krishna precipitates one's full surrender to the Supreme Lord. And then lastly, such persons are very rare. So we see a person like Srila Prabhupada is extremely rare because he has all these 5 universal realizations or visions of Krishna. Okay. So that is what is being explained in the Purusha Sukta prayer. Sahasra Sirsha Purushaha Sahasraksha Sahasrapad. And in the 13th chapter, 14th verse, this is even more elaborately explained, where it says, Sarvata panipadam tat sarvato shi siro mukham sarvata shrutimal loke sarvam avritatistati. So it says here, everywhere are his hands and legs, his eyes, heads, and faces, and he has ears everywhere. In this way, the super soul exists pervading everything. So, this is a very important verse because, and now we see the connection to the verse today in this Canto 2, Chapter 6, verse number 17. In the purport, Prabhupada says, as the sun exists diffusing its unlimited rays, so does the Supersoul, or Supreme Personality of Godhead. He exists in his all-pervading form, and in him exist all the individual living entities, beginning from the first great teacher, Brahma, down to the small ants. There are unlimited heads, legs, hands, and eyes, and unlimited living entities. All are existing in and on the Supersoul. Therefore, the Supersoul is all-pervading. The individual soul, however, cannot say that he has his hands, legs, and eyes everywhere. That is not possible. If he thinks that under ignorance he is not conscious that his hands and legs are diffused all over, but when he attains to proper knowledge, he will come to that stage. His thinking is contradictory. So this is what the Mayavadis say, that you can, through a process of meditation and sacrifice and rejection of sense gratification, this thing and that thing, you can attain this transcendental position where you actually become God. Well, there's no such thing as becoming God. Either you are or you aren't. Right? And you cannot become God. You can become godly, but you cannot become God by any process, because Krishna is a unique person. He has inconceivable energies. And the jiva does not have that potential. The jiva is limited. But when the jiva connects to Krishna, then he can also experience unlimited bliss and knowledge. But without the connection to Krishna, the jiva is always very, very limited, and it's not at all omnipresent everywhere, whereas Krishna is. So it says, the individual soul, however, cannot say that he has his hands, legs, and eyes everywhere. So how is Krishna saying that he has his hands, legs, and eyes everywhere? Because he's present as Paramatma in the body. And he is all-knowing. So those hands, legs, and eyes, they all belong to him. They don't actually belong to us. And they should only be used in his service. Although we have the opportunity, if we want, to use them selfishly. But that just gets us entangled more and more in the cycle of birth and death. So when we realize that the body, the senses, the mind, intelligence, everything is meant to function for Krishna, not for selfish purposes. This is hard for people to understand, because we have come into the world to separate ourselves from Krishna, so that we can become little Krishnas. But that's not the purpose of human life. Human life is to develop this universal vision of Krishna's presence in everything. And therefore, we should use everything in the service of Krishna. Okay, so in this purport, again, let's go back to this Bahunam Jamanamante 7:19. Prabhupada says, the living entity, while executing devotional service or transcendental rituals, after many, many births, may actually become situated in transcendental pure knowledge that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the ultimate goal of spiritual realization. In the beginning of spiritual realization, while one is trying to give up one's attachment to materialism, there is some leaning towards impersonalism. But when one is further advanced, he can understand that there are activities in the spiritual sky and that these activities constitute devotional service. Realizing this, he becomes attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and surrenders to him. At such a time, one can understand that Lord Sri Krishna's mercy is everything, and that he is the cause of all causes. So, Krishna has this ability. He has these abilities that are inimitable. In other words, you cannot imitate his absolute powers and his internally expanding powers. So it says here, the individual soul, however, and this is back to 13th chapter, 14th verse, cannot say that he has his hands, legs, and eyes everywhere. That is not possible. If he thinks that under ignorance he is not conscious that his hands and legs are diffused all over, but when he attains to proper knowledge, he will come to that stage, this thinking is contradictory. In other words, this is nonsense thinking like that. This means that the individual soul, having become conditioned by material nature, is not supreme. The supreme is different from the individual soul. The Supreme Lord can extend his hand without limit. The individual soul cannot. In Bhagavad Gita, see again, what Prabhupada is, and Krishna himself is emphasizing that the jiva cannot become God, the Supreme Personality. The fact that he has forgotten that he came from the spiritual world is a symptom that he's conditioned, and he was not God even in the spiritual world. He was always the servant of God. Whereas the Mayavadis, they want to convince you can become God by some process. And the karma yogis, they try and attain heavenly planets and heavenly sense gratification. Again, they have very, very little knowledge of who Krishna actually is. The Jnanis have a little bit more knowledge, but it's incomplete. Therefore, they can also fall down. The karma yogis who are practicing karma yoga for material benefit, they're already fallen. Right? And the mystic yogis who are trying to develop very powerful mystic powers, siddhis, they also will fall down because they don't take shelter of devotional service. I mean, they might be doing some partial devotional service, but it's not complete. So they also will fall down. So there it says, in Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated that although a person may rise to the stage of impersonal Brahman without going further, with no information of the Supreme Person, his intelligence is not very clear. Therefore, in spite of being raised to the Brahman platform, there's the chance of falling down if one is not engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. In the Vedic language, it is also said, Rasovai Saha, Rasam Evayam, Labdvanandi Bhavati. When one understands the personality of Godhead, the reservoir of pleasure of Krishna, he actually becomes transcendently blissful. Taittiriya Upanishad 2.7.1. The Supreme Lord is full in 6 opulences, and when a devotee approaches him, there is an exchange of these 6 opulences. The servant of the king enjoys on an almost equal level with the king, and so eternal happiness, imperishable happiness, and eternal life accompany devotional service. Therefore, realization of Brahman, or eternity, or imperishability, is included in devotional service. This is already possessed by a person who is engaged in devotional service. In other words, devotional service elevates a person very quickly to the stage of asamsayam samagram, understanding of the Supreme Absolute Truth, personality of Godhead. And therefore, one engages all the time in devotional service. So, Prabhupada further explains now in 1427, he says, the living entity, although Brahman by nature, has the desire to lord it over the material world, and due to this he falls down. In his constitutional position, a living entity is above the 3 modes of material nature, but association with material nature entangles him in the different modes of material nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance. Due to the association of these 3 modes, his desire to dominate the material world is there. By engagement in devotional service, in full Krishna consciousness, he is immediately situated on the transcendental position, and his unlawful desire to control material nature is removed. So this is the immediate benefit of engaging full-time in devotional service. This crazy idea that we can become God, we can become a potentate or a very powerful person and control nature, it's complete nonsense. Right? So, therefore, the process of devotional service, beginning with hearing, chanting, remembering, the prescribed 9 methods for realizing devotional service, should be practiced in the association of devotees. Gradually, by such association, by the influence of the spiritual master, one's material desire to dominate is removed, and one becomes firmly situated in the Lord's transcendental loving service. So that's the benefit of constantly associating with genuine devotees. This method is prescribed from the 22nd to the last verse of this chapter. Devotional service to the Lord is very simple. One should always engage in the service of the Lord, should eat the remnants of foodstuffs offered to the deity, Smell the flowers offered to the lotus feet of the Lord. See the places where the Lord had his transcendental pastimes, and read of the different activities of the Lord. This reciprocation of love with his devotees, chant always the transcendental vibration, Hare Krishna, Hare. Okay, his reciprocation of love with his devotees is what? It's this chanting always the transcendental vibration, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, and observe the fasting days commemorating the appearances and disappearances of the Lord and his devotees. By following such a process, one becomes completely detached from all material activities. One who can thus situate himself in the Brahma Jyoti, or the different varieties of the Brahman conception, is equal to the Supreme Personality of Godhead in quality. So, what is it that the karmis, the jnanis, and the yogis, what mistake are they making? They either want heavenly sense gratification without surrender to Krishna, but they're willing to go through all these arduous or difficult ritual processes and so forth to attain that level of sense gratification. Or they have partial knowledge of Krishna as the Brahma Jyoti, and but they want to become one with the Brahma Jyoti, or become God by merging. Or they develop these transcendental powers, and they enjoy dominating things in the universe through their powers, and even the power to go penetrate the Brahma Jyoti and even maybe see Krishna, just like Durvasa did that with his yogic power. But still, they fall down. Still, they don't reach the highest goal, which is pure love of Krishna, because they want something. If you want Krishna, then you're free of all material desires. If you want something besides Krishna, then you're still conditioned by material desires. See? So the karma yogi, the jnana yogi, and the astanga or mystic yogi, they all want something besides Krishna or without Krishna. And so you can't say that the mystic yogis like Durvasa Muni don't know Krishna. They know Krishna. They know something about him. But they also still have these material desires to dominate. So they will eventually fall down also. Okay, so therefore, the idea is that we should tam eva saranam gacha sarva bhavena bharata tat prasadat param santim stanam prapsyasi sasvatam. If we come to this mature understanding of that nothing is independent of Krishna, and everything has a relationship to the Lord, and we develop that vision, then we should completely surrender unto him. That's what this verse 1862 says. Knowing these things, we should naturally and easily surrender completely to the Lord, and by the Lord's grace we'll attain transcendental peace and the supreme eternal abode. In other words, going back to Godhead. So, how can we become completely detached from all material activities? Well, that's explained also in the purport, 1427. Prabhupada says that devotional service to the Lord is very simple. And he says, one should always engage in the service of the Lord, should eat the remnants of foodstuff offered to the deity, smell the flowers offered to the lotus feet of the Lord, see the places where the Lord had his transcendental pastimes, Read of the different activities of the Lord, his reciprocation of love with his devotees. Chant always the transcendental vibration, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Observe fasting days, commemorating the appearances and disappearance of the Lord and his devotees. By following such a process, one becomes completely detached from all material activities. One who can thus situate himself in the Brahmajyoti or the different varieties of the Brahman conception is equal to the Supreme Personality of Godhead in quality. So we come up to the level of Krishna. That doesn't mean we become Krishna, but we can act on the same level as Krishna, and that is in the spiritual world, devoid of all material desires, and however full of desires to please the Lord. So this is, Prabhupada is saying here that it's actually easy to do this, and simple. It's when we purify our desires that it's easy and simple. But if we cannot transform our material desires into desires to please Krishna, then it's very hard. And people experience a lot of difficulties in spiritual life because of that inability to purify their desires. You never can. The Mayavadis want to eliminate desires. That's impossible. But one can purify desires. That is possible. So, but you cannot get rid of desires. It's not possible. And because of that, Mayavadis fall down because they are artificially controlling themselves. Okay, so again, this there's one other point I want to make. Let's see, where is that? Okay. Then also in the 13th chapter, verse number 15, it says, Bhagavad Gita also confirms that when the Lord appears, he appears as he is by his internal potency. He is not contaminated by the material energy because he is the Lord of material energy. In the Vedic literature, we find that his whole embodiment is spiritual. He has his eternal form called Satchitananda Vigraha. He is full of all opulence. He is the proprietor of all wealth and the owner of all energy. He is the most intelligent and is full of knowledge. These are some of the symptoms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the maintainer of all living entities and the witness of all activity. As far as we can understand from Vedic literature, the Supreme Lord is always transcendental. Although we do not see his head, face, hands, or legs, he has them. And when we are elevated to the transcendental situation, we can see the Lord's form. Due to materially contaminated senses, we cannot see his form. Therefore, the impersonalists who are still materially affected cannot understand the personality of Godhead. So, the understanding of Krishna's unique qualities will make us qualified to be able to see the Lord. Unless we understand his unique qualities that no one else can emulate, that no one else even comes close to, we remain basically an atheist, and we cannot give up material desires. So this hearing constantly about the Lord's transcendental pastimes, his transcendental energies, his transcendental expansions, his transcendental capabilities, and so forth, is essential to overcome our attraction to Mayavad philosophy or to sense gratification. Mayavad philosophy is a type of sense gratification also. Right? Okay, so we'll stop right there. Are there any questions?
Krishna Maharaj. So as we were reading about Super Soul yesterday, so Super Soul resides next to the soul, or Super Soul is within the soul itself, like in our body.
What did you say?
So soul resides just next to. Sorry. Super Soul resides just next to the soul and in our body,
Yes,
not inside the soul.
both.
Both. Okay.
He is the soul of the soul. Okay, this is explained in 8th chapter, where it says, eighth chapter, verse number 9. It says, the Lord is Kavi, that is, he knows past, present, and future, and therefore knows everything. He's the oldest personality because he is the origin of everything. Everything is born out of him. He is also the supreme controller of the universe, and he is the maintainer and instructor of humanity. He is smaller than the smallest. Smaller than the smallest. The living entity is 1/10,000th part of the tip of a hair, but the Lord is so inconceivably small that he enters into the heart of this particle. He enters into the heart of the soul, and the soul is 1/10,000th part of the tip of a hair, so he's smaller than the smallest. As the supreme, he can enter into the atom and into the heart of the smallest and control him as the supersoul. Although so small, he is still all-pervading and is maintaining everything. By him, all these planetary systems are sustained. We often wonder how these big planets are floating in the air. It is stated here that the Supreme Lord, by his inconceivable energy, is sustaining all these big planets and systems of galaxies. The word achintya, inconceivable, is very significant in this connection. God's energy is bestowed beyond our conception, beyond our thinking jurisdiction, and is therefore called inconceivable, achintya. Who can argue this point? He pervades this material world and yet is beyond it. We cannot comprehend even this material world, which is insignificant compared to the spiritual world. So how can we comprehend what is beyond? Achintya means that which is beyond this material world, that which our argument, logic, and philosophical speculation cannot touch, that which is inconceivable. Therefore, intelligent persons avoiding useful argument and speculation should accept what is stated in scriptures like the Vedanta, the Bhagavad Gita, and Srimad Bhagavatam, and follow the principles they set down. This will lead to the understanding. This will lead one to understanding. So you see, I mean, this hearing about Krishna's qualities is essential on a daily basis. Otherwise, we end up with a mundane understanding of Krishna, and then we fall down from Krishna consciousness. So the Paramatma enters into the heart of the Jivatma. Thus, he's smaller than the smallest. Okay? But yet, he's also 9 inches, right? As super soul. So we can't do any of these things, but Krishna can do all of them. He can be smaller than the Jiva and enter into the heart of the Jiva, and he's also 9 inches, perceived as 9 inches in the heart area, and he's also the universal form, Virat Rupa, that encompasses everything. So he's immanent, and he's and everything's immanent means he's in everything, and he's also encompassing everything. These are, as we said yesterday, mutually contradictory qualities. You cannot emulate that. You cannot. We cannot do these things as jivas, but Krishna can. Haribol. Where's Prabhupada? You good?
Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala
Bhakati Sadma Bandho Mohi Savadhana Mate
Bandhu Muhi Savadana Mate
Jahara Prasade Bai Ye Bhavatoriya Jai
Janara Prasade Vai E Baba Toriya Jai
Krishna Prapti Hoy Jaha Hoy Te
Krishna Prapti Hoya Hoy Te
Krishna Prapti Hoy Jaha Hoy Te
Krishna Prapti Hoya Hoy Te
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitate Koriya Aikya
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitite Koriya Aikya
Arana Kori Ho Mane Asha
Orana Koriya Mane Asa
Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Uttama Gati
Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Uttama Gati
Ye Prasade Pure Sarva Asha
Prasade Pure Sarva Asa
Ye Prasade Pure Sarva Asha
Ye Prasade Pure Sarva Asa
Chakshudan dilo jai janme janme prabhu se
Chakshudan dila je janme janme Prabhu se
Chakshudan dilo jai janme janme prabhu se
Chakshudan dila je janme janme Prabhu se
Divya gyan hrude prakashito
Divya ज्ञानदे प्रकाशितो
प्रेमा भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जाते
प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जाते
प्रेमा भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जाते
प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जाते
वेदे गाय जहर चरितो
वेदे गाय जहर चरितो
चरितो
वेदे गाय जहर चरितो
श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आदम जनर बंधु श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आदम जनर बंधु
श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आदम जनर बंधु
लोकनाथ लोकेर जीवाना
केना लोकेर जीवाना
लोकनाथ लोकेर जीवाना
केना लोकेर जीवाना
आह प्रभु कोरो दया देहो मोरे पादचया
प्रभु करो दया देह मोरे पादचया
आह प्रभु कोरो दया देहो मोरे पादचया
प्रभु करो दया देह मोरे पादचया
ए बेजाश गुशुक त्रिभुवाना
सखी भुवाना
शील प्रभुपाद पतित पवाना
प्रभुपाद पतित पवाना
जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा
Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada
जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada
जय जय गुरुदेव 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 जय जय गुरुदेव
Jaya Gurudev Gurudev
गुरुदेव जय जय गुरुदेव नमः ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रस्थाय भूतले श्रीमति भक्ति वेदांत स्वामिन् इति नामिने
Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namini
नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्देशतारिणे
Namaste Saraswati Deve Guravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pasyajadeshatarine
जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद
Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya
चैतन्य
Prabhu Nityananda
नित्यानंद
Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaurvaktavinda.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Nittai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nittai Gaura Hari Bol, Nittai Gaura
Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol,
Nittai Gaura Hari
Bol. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Pararajika Chastatra Satara Shri Shimari's Divine Grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai. Prem Shri Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Vaishnadhar Shri Vasi Gaur Bhaktivedanta ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sam Kundu Radha Kundu Giri Govardhan ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Dham ki Jai. Shri Jagannath Puri Dham ki Jai. Tulasi Devi ki Jai. Bhakti Devi ki Jai. Ganga Maya ki Jai. Jamuna Maya ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakti Vrinda ki Jai. Thai Gaur Premananda. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. The lotus feet of our spiritual master, the only way by which we can attain the pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet and bear all burdens. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. I only wish to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus feet. Attachment to his lotus feet is perfection and fulfills all desires. It opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. It is my Lord, birth. From him ecstatic prema emanates. By him ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures single his character. Our spiritual master, the ocean mercy, friend and foreign Lord and master of the devotees. O Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of the lotus feet. You frame its thread throughout all the three worlds. We take shelter of lotus feet. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.